Today at Speedy's Garage we're going to be installing a Fast Intentions catback exhaust on our Project 370Z. As you can see, it comes very well packaged. Everything was wrapped up nice and secure, arrived no problems. It was boxed up nice and tight. Even comes with gaskets and bolts, everything else needed for the install. Since the Z is my daily driver, I went with the 18-inch resonated version. So it has these two resonator cans underneath the cab of the car to help keep the drone down. This is probably the most high quality exhaust system I've ever seen. They even, hope you can see that, they even ground down the welds on the inside of the pipes for smooth flow. That's impressive. All of the welds are really nice and clean, as you can see. And I've laid the system out as it will go together on the car. Has a really nice sporty look to it. And the tips are resonated as well. Okay, so the tools you're going to need to install the Fast Intentions catback on the 370Z is a 6-inch 3/8 extension, a 12-inch 3/8 extension, a 3/8 ratchet, a swivel 3/8 ratchet bit, a 10mm socket, a 14mm deep well socket, a 11/16 inch wrench, 5/8, and two 9/16, a 12mm, and a 10mm ratcheting. It says that's optional, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. I'm hoping that since I have access to these impact tools, I won't be using this ratchet very much. I prefer to use power tools whenever possible. So I've got a small 3/8 DeWalt impact, and then I've got the big boy 1/2-inch DeWalt impact, and if that won't do the job, then I've got a snap-on 1/2-inch air-driven impact. And that's good for 450 foot-pounds, so that should get any bolt loose that I have trouble with. Of course, I'm going to use lots of WD-40. Some of those bolts I've already looked. They look a little rusty, so I'm going to go ahead and soak those down now, the night before, and then I'll actually do the install tomorrow. That way they'll have time to soak. And then of course you're going to want your Fast Intentions install instructions. First thing you're going to need to do is get the car in the air somehow. If you have access to a lift, obviously use it. I put mine up on some race ramps. They work really well for this, and jack stands in the back. And all I did was use the factory locations where there's notches in the frame rail for the jack stands. But this isn't the safest thing to do, so make sure you know what you're doing when you're jacking the car up. You don't want to be under there wrestling with the exhaust system and the car being unstable. You notice I've got the front wheels chalked for safety. Really take this part seriously because you can get bad hurt if the car falls on you, obviously. So here's where I place the jack stands for the back. You can see these notches right here and right here. That tells you that's a factory jack point. Obviously this seam is not strong enough to support the weight of the car, but the metal behind it is. They've put a little plate back there, and that's exactly where I put my jack stand. Now, when you're jacking up the car, you can use one of these on your jack if it'll accept it. It slides down in there, and then it goes up around the frame pinch weld like that to keep the jack off the pinch weld. But you have to have a jack that's made for that. Up front, there's the same type of deal. The pinch weld has these two notches in it telling you that this is the jack point. However, I'm going to put mine on the ramps because that's safer. And there's also a jack point on that metal, that gray metal plate up there. If you look in your owner's manual, it'll tell you where the jack point is if you have to jack from the front. Do not work on the car with just a jack holding the car up. A jack can fail. I actually had a friend get killed doing that. So do not work on the car with just a jack holding the car. Make sure you use jack stands and make sure it's stable. You want to start with removing the stock exhaust system and work from the back to the front. And the first thing you need to do is remove these 14mm flange bolts here and here. Now the next thing I'm going to do, and this deviates from the instructions a little bit, is I'm going to go ahead and just drop this hanger bracket, because it's a lot easier to get these rubber grommets off of the exhaust system once it's off the car. So I'm going to go ahead, I went ahead and remove these there's three 12mm bolts that held this on, so that's gone. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove this 12mm bolt that's holding this grommet on. And then that'll just drop the exhaust down. And there's one more bracket like this on the other side, so you'll need to take those three out, and then the muffler should come off. And there's the stock muffler removed. Got it over here on the garage floor. That thing's heavy, let me tell you. I'm gonna guess it weighs 40 or 50 pounds. Now what I'll do is I'll shoot some WD-40 on these rubber grommets, and I'll take these brackets off and put them, get them ready to go back on the Fast Intentions exhaust system. Now I've put a good bit of WD-40 on this rubber grommet. Now it should just pop right off. See, that's much easier than trying to do it on the car. Next you need to disconnect the Y pipe. It's about midway down the car, and it's 14mm bolts there and there, and it's got rubber hangers there and there with 12mm bolts. I may try to wiggle these out rather than dropping the hangers, but if I have any trouble at all, I'll just drop the whole hanger like I did on the muffler. Okay, so there's the factory Y pipe out of the car. These flange bolts that were on this end were pretty seized up, so I did have to break out the air impact or pneumatic impact to get those loose. They are 14mm like I mentioned. If you're using this kind of stuff, make sure you wear eye protection, because there was some rust and other stuff flying all over me when I was down there getting that off, but those were seized up pretty good. And now we just have to take off the cat pipes, not the actual catalytic converters themselves, but just the down pipes from the cats, and then the stock system's completely removed. So here's the stock exhaust system removed from the car. It took me right about 45 minutes to get this off, and that included time to shoot this video. So I'd say if you're pretty proficient with tools, and if you definitely have air tools, I mean the impacts and stuff really make it go faster. You could probably have this off in 20 minutes, maybe 30 tops. Okay, now we're going to start by removing the evap canister cover, and those are three 10mm bolts we have to take off. And once you have the cover out of the way, go ahead and reinstall the front 10mm bolt, because it actually holds the evap canister bracket. Next, just want to install the little heat wrap that came with the kit on this evap canister fuel line. There's 3 zip ties holding that in place, and then just bend the corner of this heat shield back. Make sure it's not touching the line, but bend that back. That'll give clearance for the passenger side muffler canister. Now we're going to bolt up the lead pipes that come off the cats, and they're marked with a single dot for the driver's side, and it's going to face, that dot is going to face down and towards the front of the car. The passenger side has 2 dots, hope you can see that. Pretty ingenious of them to mark them, that way you know which one goes on which side. Help you orientate them. You're going to reuse the stock cat bolts as well as the stock gaskets that are on there, as well as the studs. When you're putting this lead pipe on, you want to check the gasket, make sure everything looks flush before you tighten it all the way down. And just don't tighten it yet. Just get it really good and snug so it's not putting pressure on the studs. You'll actually tighten it as you put the system together. Okay, you just want to feed the X pipe from the back to the front, and it will fit in between this brace and the heat shield, no problem. And then start your bolts. You almost need 3 arms for this part, but it's manageable. Now you want to start to tighten up the bolts going from front to back. Make sure all the flanges and gaskets are lined up. I'm going to start with just a ratchet, and then I'll hit it with the impact after this. I can double check everything. Okay, now it's time to install the mufflers. And you're going to use the gaskets that are supplied and a 9/16 bolt and nut also supplied. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put our exhaust hanger brackets that we took off at the beginning of this onto the Fast Intentions muffler pipes. Put a squirt of WD-40 in the hole. I'll help it slide on nice and easy. Just like that. And make sure the flat edge of your bracket's pointing up and to the outside. Okay, you'll have to kind of muscle and wrestle with the muffler pipes to get them installed. If you have a buddy help you hold the tip so that you can work with a little bit easier underneath the car, it'll help. I did it by myself, so it is doable, but it is a little bit of work. And then once you have everything lined up, you just want to come in and finish tightening down the bolts. Now once you get the system all bolted down, if one tip is a little bit higher or lower than the other, you can even them up by putting some washers on the 3 bolts that hold the last hanger bracket in place. So on mine, the driver's side is just about 1/8 of an inch lower than the passenger's, so I'm going to use a couple of washers, and you have to shim all 3 bolts. So there's the washers I'm going to use to even it out. Okay, so there's the Fast Intentions exhaust system installed. This is probably one of the highest quality exhaust systems I've ever seen. Everything fit just like it needed to. Wasn't a whole lot of adjustment required to make the tips line up, which is unusual for a dual exhaust setup. But the tips lined up perfectly. I needed like 2 little washers under each bracket in the back just to give me a 1/4 inch gap to the air dam in the back. Pretty easy install. Took me right at 2 hours, and that included shooting this video, so if you're pretty handy with wrenches, you can probably do it in 1.5 hours, no problem. There's a couple of good benefits to the Fast Intentions catback besides it just looks better than the stock system. One, it's 2.5 inch stainless steel piping instead of the factory 2 inch, so you're going to pick up quite a bit of flow. It also doesn't have all those choke points like the Y and all those dimples on the front end, so that's going to help as well. Back-to-back dyno runs, 3 in a row, showed this system to pick up 20 horsepower and 11 foot-pounds of torque, and that was averaged over the 3 runs. So it's obvious that the factory system's quite restrictive on this car. It also, the Fast Intentions catback weighs 10 pounds less than the factory system, and saving weight's always a bonus. One final thing I recommend before taking the car off the jack stands is to go ahead and fire it up and then run your hands around the flange connection points to make sure there are no leaks. Obviously you want to complete that before the exhaust system gets too hot and burns you. Other than that, wipe the tips down and the cans with glass cleaner. Get any oil and fingerprints off of them before it heats up and burns in. And finally, you want to complete 2 heat cycles on the exhaust system to extend the longevity of the mufflers and the resonated tips. Now it's time to go turn some fuel into noise. If you found this video useful and you want some more 370Z info, visit my website, www.speedysgarage.net.